just had an interesting presentation from Bill about Taguchi's loss function and the business economics involved. The second part of this afternoon, I promised you a joyful afternoon with pleasure, and then you put ISO 9000 on the screen, and that is normally the moment that people either run away or start screaming, get nervous for a certification body, or get wrinkles because of the documentation involved. So it's quite a challenge after your talk, Bill, to continue with ISO 9000. But the good news is that everything we just talked about, hours, you can just apply within ISO 9000. ISO 9000 is not at all wrong. It includes system thinking, it includes plan, do, check, act, continuous improvement. It gives you maybe some guidance in what to do or how to think. It does not give you directions how to do things. But our experience is that it is the thinking of us, ourselves, that leads directly to this compliance thinking that Bill was just talking over the last hour. But there is nowhere in ISO 9000 an indicator that you should do that. On the contrary, it promotes thinking in systems. It promotes thinking from the customer. It promotes thinking in relationship. As a matter of fact, in chapter 0, you have relationships defined. I think, that's my personal opinion, it's us human beings that use quality management, use ISO 9000 in an incorrect way. So let's look in the mirror ourselves and not blaming ISO 9000 for that. That's the first comment I would like to make. The second comment I like to make is, and this is recorded, so I will be polite, but the ones who wrote it, yeah, well, you can imagine that you use other wording, other sentences. It's written in a way that you need to be either a consultant expert or a quality management expert, but it's obviously not useful for a team leader or a production manager or even a director. To my personal experience, I do not know one director that ever read the ISO 9000 norm, because they think, well, that's something for the quality manager or something like that, which it isn't. But that's not very convenient that it is written in a way that you need to be half a lawyer to understand what it says. And that unfortunately continues. So the new version of ISO 9000 2026, I prayed, I hoped, I shouted, I screamed, I wrote, but it's the same text. It didn't change. It's the same very complex bureaucratic way of writing. So we have to live with that. Now that we cannot change, but what we can change is our thinking about it. That we can change. So there is absolutely no limitation in the norm to do not apply Taguchi's thoughts or ideas about thinking, about Deming's ideas on systems. That's all in. So I think personally that it's a challenge for ourselves, as we are here all together as the production managers, as quality managers, as lean managers, all sorts of professionals that have a job to do to bring across the right message to our organizations and to help them understanding what that ISO 9000 actually contains and means. Well, that's a hard job, but all right. Let's deal with that. to start with, you can use this introduction for your management team. It will be recorded, it will be on YouTube, so you can pass it on. Maybe that helps. And if not, then you have to do it yourself. Right, Michael? I know you had some challenges there. So let's see what's then, that is an introduction. Let's see what's then, yes, please, Bill.
No, I was going to say, what comes to mind based on what you said is, the better your organization is operating as a system, the easier the ISO 9000 effort is, because it's
Absolutely.
but if you're not, then it just becomes a separate activity, which doesn't improve how you work together because it's viewed as a separate activity.
Exactly. And that's where it gets strange and weird. So that's where we get the director who put the organogram down on the table and said, hey, you are quality manager, you deal with ISO 9000, I'm going to do something else.
And it doesn't change the synergy.
And there you have the separation.
Yeah.
So there's separation everywhere.
Yeah. So,
but it's us who make the separation. It's not the norm itself.
Right. Yeah, I was saying is if the organization doesn't understand positive synergy, then you're not going to. Then the ISO 9000 efforts may not change that.
Yeah,
it's
completely correct. Yeah. Agree with it. Yeah. No, it's us, quality managers, production managers, directors. We need to do the effort to make the change in the organization. The documentation of ISO does not do anything. All right. I had the privilege to study the new version, the draft version. So everything I'm going to explain in this, let's say 45 minutes, is with a big disclaimer. It can change because the real version will be out after the summer. But we had the draft, and the draft you can see here from points 1 to 7 is the same chapters, the same naming, chapters 4 to 10, the chapters 1 to 3 you can skip. So that's basically all the same. Maybe nice to mention that when the previous norm was published in 2015, we were actually the first one to get certified in the country, because I simply called DNV and I said, I want to be the first. Whenever you're ready, you're invited, and let's do it. Then we have the first experiences. I did the same. So hopefully DNV will be on our doorstep as soon as it is possible, and hopefully we are again the first, and then we can share the experiences with you. That's of course why we do it. And then we will inform you what the experiences are. So I will go through to the presentation. Feel free to add something in the comments, in the chat. It's on presentation mode, so you can also switch on your mic and just raise your questions. No problem at all. For those who have to run and cannot follow the complete presentation, these are the main topics that changed in the norm. That gives directly a debate. So if you look at the norm very specifically, if you read it, you will see little changes. So 99% of the text in the ISO 9000 to 2026 is exactly the same as the previous one. It's just a matter of adding some lines and words in between everywhere throughout the norm. And so from that point of view, if you want to be specific, literally there's not much of a change. If you want to make it a system, you want to make the transformation in your organization, it's a huge change. And that's what I would like to focus on in this presentation, not on the small words that has been changed, because these are the words that we're going to talk about. But it's of course about the complete transformation to system thinking and customer focus and working together. There's one that's kind of difficult. It's number 5. Data and digitalizing. I find almost everywhere that is a new topic in the norm, and I cannot find it. I read the norm several times. The word data and digitalization or cybersecurity, it's not there. But everyone with the certification bodies is mentioning it. And they claim that they are going to emphasize more on this topic, not because it's there, but because it's at this moment a very present topic in the news in organizations. So it's not that it's somewhere written that you need to have a cybersecurity protocol or something like that. It's not there. But from the certification bodies, I learned that they are going to emphasize on this topic. So that's why the question mark is there. Most important, the PDCA is equally important as ever. No change at all. I think the most important changes are in chapter 4. Chapter 4 is about the organization as a system. It introduces there the perception of the customer and how you add value to the customer. That did not change in wording, but they claim to emphasize on that, to look further if organizations are really understanding what the customer's desires are and how they can be measured and how you can deal with that and how that is organized in the organization, as Bill just explained the last hour. So it's more of a interpretation of the certified bodies. Except for this one, that was a real experience. Measuring customer satisfaction. Now you may do it yourself, I don't know, but we did it as well. We measure customer satisfaction. So when the customers have done a training here or they have another kind of services from us, we do a customer satisfaction measurement, and that customer satisfaction measurement is always about how satisfied are you. Boring, but that's what we did, I admit. Now the question is, what type of satisfaction are we as Patagonia looking for? What is the meaning of our services to the customers? And we came to the conclusion that we want to have an effect in other organizations. We want to help organizations transform. We want to help you as participants grow your knowledge, your experiences. And that we have defined as having impact, having an effect or learning. And so we changed our customer satisfaction measurement from measuring customer satisfaction into, did we have effect on your organization, on your professional competences? So we are more measuring really the experience of the customer. And I give this example because this is precisely one of the changes in the norm. We had with DNV this discussion last year, and they prepared us for that. And as a matter of fact, they inspired us to look differently at the word customer satisfaction, not as a dull number from 1 to 10, but more in terms of what did you achieve actually with this? Do you have feedback from the customer that you had an effect on their services or products or organization or whatsoever? So I was very happy with that. So,
question.
Yes, please.
Does this go into the 4 levels of Kirkpatrick after training, where you look at the immediate effect, the effect, and then in level 4, the total effect on the bottom line of the organization in what has changed in behavior, has changed in...
We don't do that because we are happy if we get a feedback at all. So you need to find a smart way to get some feedback, and you might know that the response rate is something like, well, with us, it's something like 15-20%. So we are very happy with that. But it's not an extensive assessment in what you mean now. Of course, the norm leaves you completely free to do that. So that's all okay, but it's not mentioned in the directive as such. Yeah. But I would recommend having a discussion in your organization about how do we measure the customer satisfaction and can we make a better use out of it. I predict that the certification bodies will go into that. Here in the picture, by the way, you see a gentleman that inspired me tremendously. I met him in Japan. He was the director quality of Toyota. The only thing he talked about was joyful work. Having pleasure, working together, achieving something with your customer. So that was also an indicator, right? We have to leave this path of just asking for numbers. Right?
Joy in work.
Joy in work, yes. The next thing is also new. There is a other directive, that's the directive ISO 9000. So you have 9001, but you also have 9000. In 9000 you will find definitions that are used in 9001. And there is now the definition business continuity, and that is pretty interesting. And that is mentioned now in the norm. Your organization has some kind of role in society, in the economic constructions. You work with your stakeholders, you work with your customers, with your suppliers. You're part of a mondial economy. And the new norm will emphasize more on, did you think about that? Did you think about, all right, there's a war somewhere in Iran, what's the consequence for us? If there is a pandemic like a COVID virus, what's the consequence on that for our organization? Now you might say that's already in the risk analysis. Yes, that's all good. Put it in the risk analysis, that's all fine. But putting it in the risk analysis is not yet the same as making it part of your business thinking. And that's new. That's new in the directive, that you should be aware more than before of what happens around you and how you deal with that. Well, AI is of course one of the splendid examples of that. Everybody has to deal with it. So you cannot make a risk analysis now anymore about, all right, AI is a risk or is not a risk, is a chance. But how do you incorporate in your business thinking, in your economics? That's very relevant now, the new norm. What kind of effect does it have on your organization? So the action we would like to share with you and like to advise is make a business plan. Now, I know from experience that that's not a popular word. When I go to the C-suite people and I ask for a business plan, it's either empty or it's a short PowerPoint or something like that. I don't want to emphasize on a 100-page thick plan. That's not the idea. The idea is at least to put on one piece of paper, or 2 or 3 or 4 pieces of paper, I don't care, that you write down the principles of your organization in relation to the economics. So it's more thought work than writing. It's not about the writing, it's about sitting together and thinking about how do we do in the economy. Yes, please. Yes.
You mean as in purpose and added value?
Yes, in purpose and added value, and then transferred into, all right, if that's the purpose and the added value, how do we make that practical in our organization? What does it mean for the IT department? What does it mean for the production department? What does it mean for the sales department? What is the consequence? That relationship. The experience is that that relationship is not yet so well established. We see quite some organizations that have a business plan or strategic plan, or choose the wording you like. But that's then a piece of paper, a document with the C-suite people. And then we go over to make an organogram and let's start working. So there is no connection between the two things, the organization and the relationship with customers and all the developments. And they want to see that relationship. And that will come back on more points in the new version. And that is basically the essence of the change in the new 2026 version. This is the essence. So that underlines, again, system thinking. As Deming explained it, the system is infinite. Infinite in size, but also infinite towards the future. What will happen in the future? Well, we know we have some kind of precedent, we have some kind of worldwide problems and so on. So can you anticipate on that? That's the big question.
That first, your first slide, you showed data and digitalization.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, not the data, but the fact that it's digital. Maybe you should add the word secure.
Secure.
Because if that is not secure, it's now digital. But if you should also, like an old vault, you should lock it.
Yeah.
And maybe they've got that in the part of digitalizing things.
Yeah.
And now it's a risk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I try to use the word from the directive here. So the word security is not mentioned in the norm.
No.
And data also not. So you can add any word you like. So in chapter 7 of the norm, you will find software and hardware. Extend that to the max and read their AI, security, whatever you like. Risks. That's also not new. That was also seen in the previous version. But they're going to emphasize on that. So let's put it a bit blunt. In the previous years, you could just do a risk analysis in Excel and you got your stamp and that auditor said, all right, you have a risk analysis. That's probably not enough anymore. So again, you'll find here that the certification bodies will ask deeper and say, all right, what are the risks? How thorough did you do that? And how did you transfer that into decision-making processes on board level, on management level, on team leader level? So can you prove that risks, either internal risks, external risks, but also chances, that was also already in the previous directive, but chances is always a bit, it didn't come out that well. But chances and risks, not only did you make an Excel with a number and then choose 1 or 3 items and then improve those risks. No, how did you do the real decision-making process based on the thinking about risks internally and externally?
But it's still only paperwork, right? Here, not like, for instance, years ago, the training center that I led had 120 positions. And within an hour, we could convert that into a help desk because the help desk was located in a fracture zone in the US. So if an earthquake would happen over there and people would have survived, they could come over to New York. We had all the equipment, IP telephones, everything was stacked up because we were completely prepared. But what I'm hearing from you is it's only paperwork.
No,
thinking about. No? Okay. All right.
On the contrary, it's precisely what you just claimed. So, but you need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You need to sit together. You have to collect data.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do analysis. You have to analyze the economy. You have to analyze your competition. You have to analyze your customer satisfaction. You have to analyze da. So you analyze the whole world around you. That's doing work.
Mm-hmm.
That's not paperwork.
Okay.
That's analysis. That's doing good analysis. That's what analysis means. Analysis doesn't mean let's fill in an Excel and put some numbers behind it and now we get a stamp. No, it means thorough analysis on anything that's important for your organization. And then with that analysis, you're going to do something. You're going to make decisions. You're going to say, all right, we need to implement something because we're going to have an earthquake in that area, or we can have a virus, or we can have a war. What do we do about it? And so I'd like to emphasize on that you see it there, that the managers need to be involved. So you as a quality manager on your own, doing an Excel and that's done, that will be over. So it's a team performance, the management team together, back to Bill's presentation, together, collecting information, that's the analysis part, and then thinking about it, how to do the implementation, how to work together as departments to resolve or to reduce that risk.
Mhm.
Meaning that in an external audit, each manager must be able to get questioned about the risks, about the economy, about the health of the organization, about the choices they have made. So let's put it a bit unpleasant, but the production manager who says, that's not for me, I only produce the numbers, that's over. He needs to be aware of some risks internally or externally, have been part of the analysis process and be part of the creative process to find solutions and to make decisions as a team to achieve something, whatever that is. So the word risk is the same, but how the certification bodies are going to look at it, that will be different. And that's a very good step forward, because you want to get away from these Excel builders who just fill in numbers. No, you want a team effort. You want a shared responsibility for what you serve to your customers and the decisions you make. So prepare your management team. That is basically share with them, and the picture I chosen with that is a very nice example. Again, that is a picture taken in Japan. I was with the company Mifune, no idea how you pronounce it. A second-tier supplier of the automobile industry there. And we were there with a group of, we thought, smart people as a consultant. And he started to explain us TPS in detail. In detail. He started to lecture us on the Toyota production system, how it works, what it means for his organization, what the details are, how it works, everything. Well, you name me one director in this country that can explain to his management or her management or to team leaders the exact details of TPS or TQM or anything you like. That's the nice example. So the top management, including the board, needs to be aware and involved on how do you analyze risk and how do you transfer that into action in your organization. I was impressed by this gentleman. Skill number 4, because most of the changes are in chapter 4. The stakeholders, not new. The stakeholders were already there. But again, you will probably not get away with just filling in an Excel and saying this is my stakeholder analysis and that's it. So it's the same story as I just explained. With the risk analysis, with the stakeholder analysis, it's the same. Who are your stakeholders? Do you understand their ambitions? Do you understand what they're doing? Do you understand their business case? Rather than what we may do now is just filling in an Excel and mention some numbers and do some action. So also the stakeholder analysis needs to become part of this whole business economic thinking. And you won't get away with some simple analysis because you also need to look at the future. So we are now used to doing stakeholder analysis more or less like who's my supplier, who's my customers, who are my employees and shareholders, you know, but the system is infinite and the system is also stretching into the future. So in the future, what are perhaps new stakeholders, or are present stakeholders changing in the future? Will they make different strategic choices that we may not know now, but will be there next year or 2 years' time? So the stakeholder analysis as well, I expect it to be quite different, just like the risk analysis, than in the previous directive. To give a nice example, I took this picture. Avex is in Japan again. It's a first-tier supplier to the automobile industry. Impressive organization. So they produce all the metal parts for engines and cars and everything. They have over 300 CNC machines operational. It's totally impressive. They do not only deliver to Toyota, but also to Honda and to Suzuki and so on and so forth. But what's interesting is Toyota shares exactly all the ambitions for the next years, next 10 years, and shares that with their suppliers to be able for AVEX to comply to those strategies so they can prepare as well. Now, this is of course a very nice example, but I think you can transfer that to your own organization. Who are my partners, and do I know well enough what their strategic choices are? So you go again back to the board, make your analysis, and do your analysis and make it part of your business thinking. And the nice thing is the model, if you're working with us, we already have a stakeholder analysis format. It's in our format, it's on the opleidingen portal. You can use that because it's already fit for purpose. Because the directive says now that these stakeholders, you need to be very precise. You need to know the characteristics, you need to know the indicators, you need to know their decisions. So you need to know a lot more than what you might have done till now is, all right, that's my supplier and I communicate so once in a while about our developments. That's absolutely not enough anymore. You need to go a few steps further. You need to be precise in what the stakeholders' requirements are. So if you use that format, then it's all good, but you also have to make it part of your business thinking. Then there's a new word in the ISO directive, and that's the climate. Pay attention, Bill, because that picture I took in your garden.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Before the drought.
Climate change is literally mentioned now in chapter 4. That's new. But what I would advise you is do exactly the same as I just presented on the risks and the stakeholder analysis. It's really about analyze what the climate change, what kind of impact that have on your organization and products and services, and vice versa. And that is obviously something that is in the future. So it's not only about the now, it's not only about do we spoil oil now, or do we, how many gasoline do we spend now? No, it's also about what will be the changes in the future. So again, the future thinking is part of the thinking of the management. And they have to explain that.
Are there like dates set on future? You should look at 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, 50?
Not in the norm, but in your organization. So it's your board of directors that looks in the future for their strategy, their vision, their economic added value. And it's to the board of directors to define how far in the future they want to look. Is it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever the board is thinking that is relevant. In the norm, there's no number.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, also risk-based, of course.
Again, it's risk-based, it's analysis, it's yeah.
Thanks.
No, it's just prosa. It's just a line in the norm. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Again, chapter 4, the context analysis. That's chapter 4. They want to understand what the context of the organization is. With the scope as well. And normally we write in such a manual the scope, very dull part that's on the certificate. The context of the organization is basically the combination of what I just explained: climate change, risk, stakeholders, strategic thinking, and so on and so forth. And they want this to be part of the regular business decision-making process, instead of being a once-in-a-year activity on paper. So, for instance, if as a management team you take some decision to enter a market, to develop a new product, to cut costs, whatever you want to decide, that must be related to your context analysis. They want to see the connection there. Otherwise, you have two separate things. One paperwork analysis and one decision making. They want to see the integration of that all. But that's a good step forward to my idea. This all doesn't mean that you have to write 100 paper thick business plan, but it's about doing the activity. That's the important thing. So the context analysis is basically covered when you make a good business plan with all that I just mentioned. Also, a new word or new wording in the new directive is ESG. To be honest, I had to look it up. I didn't know that one.
I thought there was already
Environmental, social, and governance.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit in line with the European legislation for reporting that the corporate organizations have to do. So you need to emphasize not only what we just mentioned on climate change, but also the environmental, social, and governance structure. So in your context analysis, you need to explain how you deal with these items. And that's, of course, per organization different. I mean, we are a consulting and a training company. Our environmental situation is different from, for instance, Shell or Cow Manager, whatever. So again, there are no numbers mentioned in form, but that in the context analysis, you need to define an answer on these topics. Again, go back to system thinking and you're there. Leaders will be interviewed about this context analysis, about the agenda, and how they continually improve on these items. So that's a very clear next step compared to the previous directive. You do not get away with just a piece of paper. Leaders, board, top management need to have an agenda how to continue to improve on these items. Well, that's, I think, relevant as long as you do not make it paperwork. So quite some organizations have special applications for these items in an organization. Again, if you let the quality manager or the safety manager or the environmental manager do this exercise, you're back what you just explained. That's the wrong route. If you bring it back to the board and think seriously about these items and then say, all right, now let's go to continuous improvement, then it's good. Then chapter 5, quality culture. That's also a new word in the norm. We already have from other norms the safety culture and other topics. This time the quality culture is mentioned. Meaning, apart from having a plan, it needs to be integrated, and every operator needs to understand what am I producing, for who, why, with whom. So you go back to Bill's presentation. It's about working together, building the relationship, and making everybody aware what he or she is doing in the organization in relationship to the others. So that's pretty nice if you can transform your organization in that direction, then you at least comply with the norm. But most important is that it has great benefits. This picture was also taken in Japan to make it practical. What you see here this was from a food company. On the left, you see the production manager. On the right, you see the logistics manager. This is a few thousand employee big company that is a kind of, they have hotels and restaurants all over the country, something like 2,000. And these two guys could exactly identify the quality issues in the whole organization, in production, in logistics. They knew everything. They had organized feedback loops from operations via the team leaders to their desk. They were very, very aware of faults, mistakes, and how to deal with that. So I was quite impressed. While nowadays, if you ask in general a manager, what's your biggest problem in your factory, they call a KPI, and maybe the KPI has no relationship what's happening on the Gemba. They could mention exactly on the Gemba what's happening and how. That means, because we went to the Gemba, that the operators understand the word quality. And they understand how to report to their team leaders and managers. So it was really impressive to go there to the shop floors to talk with operators. I take pictures of that. But it's almost like you're talking to a quality manager. They know exactly what they were producing. They know exactly what the consumers wanted. So they were very aware of what they were doing, what their contribution was, what their added value was in the organization and to the customers. Well, that's what the norm now means with quality culture. That's the meaning. So you don't have to write books. You don't have to write paper. On the contrary, go to the Gemba and talk with people about customers and the relationship between departments and how you work together and how you achieve the ideal value. So going back to Bill's presentation, what is the ideal value actually? So that's what mentioned here, that's what meant with culture, quality culture. External auditors, and I experienced that already with ourselves, but also with other organizations, they hardly look at documents anymore. Oh, that's exaggeration. There are quite some auditors that go away from the handbooks and the manuals and the forms. They want to go to the Gemba, they want to talk, and they want to see the behavior that fits with all what we just explained. So be careful for rewriting a lot of documentation. That's really, I think, not really necessary. The implementation, on the contrary, is extremely important. Chapter 6. What is my time? I'm also going over time. Well, change management was already a bit in the norm, but it's again, it's more that it's underlined. It's not a new word, but it's described a little further. Especially that top management is relevant is responsible for the changes. So it's getting boring perhaps, but it's a good direction. So if you want to make a change based on your business economics, on your strategic thinking, whatever the changing is that you want, you are responsible and you will be involved in the change and how you do that, and you lead that. So that's pretty interesting. To my experience, organizations are kind of avoiding this topic, or it's not very present. And that makes sense because in the beginning I explained that sometimes you will have a business plan, but then it's disconnected from the organization, and that in that case you won't have changes. You go on with your daily business as usual, and you do continuous improvement maybe, but not planning really the changes that you're looking for, because you want in 3 years' time you want to achieve this or that. So that needs to be changed. So your managers need to be aware of this context analysis on the business case and lead the changes in the organization, and be personally involved, and not saying, oh, there's the project manager, he organizes that, or there's the quality manager, that's his or her part of the job. Make it again part of the line of the organization. Chapter 7, not so much changes, very little. There we get into the data management or knowledge. So all the CIs claim it's new, or it's it's more in the picture. Yeah, I can imagine that because it is more in the picture. As a matter of fact, we with Patagonia, we have done the last couple of 2 years, 3 years, a lot of IT changes because security is very important, cybersecurity, safety. We have customer information. So on the right, you see a few of our developments, what we're doing. So we have checklists and we have a whole program of IT changes. So for your organization, it's relevant, it's important. But again, in the norm, as you want to read it, I don't see a lot or actually nothing. But the CIs claim that they will emphasize on it. My personal opinion is, as a consultant, it's way more important than 10, 20 years ago. It should be absolutely on the desk, on the agenda of the board of directors, because it's an enormous risk for your organization if something happens. So to make it practical, if you want to have your certification, make it part of the business plan, just like climate change, just as a risk and the stakeholder analysis. If you put everything together there and you have a good thought about it and you know how to implement it, then I think you're going the right direction. Chapter 8, yeah, perhaps it's getting boring, but it's the same story. In the past, you had to do a supplier evaluation. That was basically the formality. That's still the same. It's still the supplier analysis, but it's described further that you need to investigate your suppliers and also the customers of your suppliers and the suppliers of your suppliers. So it's broadly described. I like that. We work a lot with, for instance, suppliers in the ASML chain or in the oil and defense chains, where you have a chain of organizations working together. They depend on each other. There needs to be a relationship. You need to cooperate in order to serve the customer. And that's more emphasized in this new directive. So think twice, look at your supply chain and see if you need to do more than the minimum you're maybe used to. Chapter 9, almost there. That's an interesting one. I'm not sure how you do it in your organization, but it's quite common to make an audit planning. And you're going to execute the audit planning, and in 9 out of 10 times, that's a kind of formality and an obligation, and you go through that procedure. They explained to me that they really are going to emphasize now on an audit program, and that's not the same as an audit planning. What they mean with an audit program is that based on your business analysis and your context analysis, you will define the audits that are useful, are relevant, are good to learn from, and not just running through a list of items. So the audit program should have a direct relationship with your business planning. So if you have a process which is hardly a risk, well, skip the audit and put your audit time in another topic that is relevant for you. So that's the idea of an audit program, that you make conscious decisions. Where are your weak spots? Where are your risks? Where are you uncertain? And there you want to learn. You want to improve, and for improvement you need to learn first, and therefore you need an audit program. So it's based on learning on your weak spot, based on your business program. That's new. I know very few people, very few organizations who do that in that way. What I'm interested in, I think you understand what I'm explaining now. This contradicts with the demand of the external auditors to check the whole system. So if this is true, if they demand an audit program, you may say, all right, this is a very risky area in our organization and this not, so I don't pay attention to this and I choose to do something else. That contradicts with the demand of having a list of all the paragraphs and checking all the paragraphs. Then we are back. Yeah. So I explained this to a few certification bodies and they didn't give me a clear answer. So They have till October to solve that, to my idea. But it is interesting. So if we could finally get rid of this rigid thinking of let's run through a checklist and do the audits, and finally do useful audits, which brings useful information for the management in order to start doing continual improvement in a sensible way, that would be a great benefit, and it will save a lot of labor work that's now completely useless. So if you're looking for efficiency, this is a great step forward. Obviously, the audit program needs to have a relationship with your business thinking. Yeah, then on chapter 9, there's also mentioned that you need KPIs, you need to measure. Now, we know that story. It's mentioned, but pay attention to the fact that if you want to use KPIs in a certain way, that you think about the future as well, the climate changes or what's relative to your business, not just picking out OEEs or we just talked about OEEs in the usefulness, but other KPIs, whatever you like. But again, make the relationship with your strategy. Yeah, that's basically it. It's not a big thing. It's not a big. It was already there. Last but not least, a frustration for us. Chapter 10 has only one way of dealing with non-conformities, and I think the procedure is well known. It's chapter 10. It's all the steps how to deal with non-conformity, how to do root cause analysis, That procedure is correct, but it's alone. There is more. There are more ways to do root cause analysis, do fast problem solving, or even longer problem solving if the problem is very complex. Whether you want to use AD or whatever system you want to use. But it's emphasized in the new version of the norm that you need to make clear that you learn and improve throughout the organization. And that's a very good thing. That's what doing Toyota already for years. But what we are used to is that there is maybe a complaint and maybe it goes to the quality manager and maybe the quality manager has time to do a root cause analysis. What's more sensible to do now is to go back to the operators. If the quality culture that we just talked about is well implemented, they know exactly when something is off, they know exactly when something is wrong or something sounds strange or something looks different. And you go to a board and you write your concern and the team leader can immediately take action just precisely as Toyota does it. Then you do a root cause analysis, you do a countermeasure and you move on, you learn from it and you move on. So you get a way faster way of doing improvement of processes. Obviously, after that registration and root cause analysis, the quality manager comes in to do further analysis and deeper analysis and trend analysis, because that you cannot expect from a team leader or an operator. But this is an excellent way, in relation to the new norm, to make learning and improving visible, which is hardly the case nowadays. So make it simple, make it connected to the quality culture that was mentioned in the other paragraph, and make it operational in such a way. If you do it in such a way, you're perfect on the right road. And here you have an example of that. I can share that with you, and that's it.